Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today's discussion is going to be on the movie Labyrinth. Hopefully, you guys will enjoy my discussion of it. I have never seen Labyrinth before, and as a Christmas gift from a friend, I got the movie. My friend knew that I had never seen it before and hoped that I would enjoy it, so he bought it for me. And so I, of course, decided to give it a try, watch it, and discuss it with you guys. This was one of the movies that was highly recommended to me through the Discord as well, of trying it out. I'm actually pretty impressed with a lot of these movies that I'm now doing discussions with you on. All of these have, all of the ones I've done so far on the channel are about movies I have never seen before. It's my first time experiencing the movie, and I think a lot of these older fantasy movies actually are much better than I had anticipated, in the fact that they're older and there's less movie magic abilities back from when they were made. So I'm actually very, very happy with how well things turned out. For this particular movie, I know it's like a fantasy classic. Like, a lot of people say that this is like one of the top fantasy movies to watch as a fantasy lover. So I am hoping that I do it justice for everybody, though I will say up front, I don't know if I got as much out of it as a lot of people suggested that I would. So hopefully I still have a good discussion for you guys, and hopefully you still enjoy what I talk about. And of course, I will let you know at the very end what my personal overall thoughts were as a whole of the movie, especially since I just watched it for the first time. So thanks to my friend, we are able to discuss it today, and I'm excited for that. This recap that we're about to get into, I don't feel like it's quite as detailed as my normal recaps are, or not quite as linear as like actually going through the steps of what happened, just because the whole movie is kind of I don't want to say that nothing happens, because that's absolutely not true, but it is all about doing one particular thing, which is going through the labyrinth. So it's a little bit harder to like break down like what the main points are. So hopefully you still appreciate this recap. I did my best to just mention what's the most important. Obviously, since it is a recap, we're not going to go through each point by point, as well as stating what was needed to for the recap, even though a lot of it is kind of blends together or merges together between different events. So let's go ahead and get started. Sarah is originally very mad at the beginning of this story that she has to babysit her baby brother while her parents go out on a date. She is so mad about it, in fact, that while she's watching him and he is crying, she wishes for the goblins to go and take him away forever. Well, that's exactly what happens, is the goblins do come and take the baby, and the Goblin King refuses to give him back. She is very much insisting that they give her brother back, and the Goblin King says that she can only get him back if she travels through the labyrinth to the castle and retrieves him herself within 13 hours. So Sarah makes her way to the labyrinth, and once inside, she starts this journey of going through the labyrinth. As she journeys closer and closer to the castle, she runs into many obstacles and strange goblins. A goblin named Hoggle ends up starting to help her, at least a little bit periodically throughout the labyrinth, as she either tricks him or convinces him to help her. Even though he's afraid of the Goblin King, she does gain his confidence to get help from him. Sarah rescues a goblin from other goblins who are, hurting him, and his name is Ludo, and he ends up joining her on her little adventure through the labyrinth. And then shortly they do come, the three of them end up in the Bog of Eternal Stench, where they meet, the trio meets another goblin named, I think it's Didymus, who is guarding the bridge across the pit. And after they are able to secure his blessing to go across the pit on the bridge, he ends up joining them with his trusty dog Steed of Ambrosius. And they all end up journeying closer and closer to the castle together. So the king, throughout this journey, tries several times to deter her or send her back to the beginning. He even gives Hogel a peach to give her, where she is supposed to forget her journey, forget everything and anything, and just focus on, herself and her dreams. But she ends up breaking free of that hold, of that forgetfulness. She rejects her materialistic items that originally were so precious to her, and she continues on her mission. They get so close, in fact, that when they're right outside the castle, the king sends all the goblins out to try and stop her from coming any closer. There's a battle going on in the town that they're in. And eventually, Sarah and her friends get through all of that to the castle. And Sarah herself confronts the Goblin King. She tries to retrieve her brother, but there is a bunch of different gravity-defying areas that make no sense, and she's running around through them trying to get to her brother. And eventually, she does get to him and is back at home. Her journey complete and successful. And she confesses that she still needs her goblin friends and will always need them. And so they appear in her room and they all party. They all have a little party at the end to celebrate her and her adventure to retrieve her brother. So that is basically the main ideas of Labyrinth, the movie Labyrinth. So, where do we start? Let's go ahead and start, first of all, with the quality of this movie. So, as I had mentioned before the recap, I feel like the quality is actually pretty good. I am always pretty surprised by how well these fantasy movies are put together, even when they are older movies. And I would say this one is no exception. It does have pretty good quality, especially for the time. The acting is good, the dialogue is well written, the story is overall well written. The puppets they made and use are really great. I think that in many ways puppets exceed where oh my gosh, what am I trying to say? Where CGI, there we go, is sometimes lacking and looks more fake than puppets do. So I really appreciate the puppets. I think that they're very realistic in many ways. I mean, obviously, it's a puppet, but it does have that realistic feel to them. It has good sounding music in there. David Bowie obviously is a musician and a singer, so that makes sense why the music would be good quality. The only thing that I felt like was kind of not great was the green screen usage, especially where she's with those bird things that are throwing heads and they want to throw her head. That scene was a little bit hard to watch just because the green screen was so noticeable. But other than that, I feel like in general the quality of this movie is really good and is top-notch for the time that it was in. So I really appreciate the quality on this movie. Next, let's go over the plot. So the plot is actually a very simple, straightforward plot. Whether that's a good plot or not is going to be up to the viewer, of course. But it's very simple, very straightforward. It's all about this one objective. And that's getting her brother back. Sarah getting her brother back. As far as the actual, journey to get that, again, it's very simple, straightforward. She's just trying to get through this maze, this labyrinth that she is weaving in and out of and dealing with the obstacles that are in that labyrinth to get to the castle. So, as far as epic journeys go, it's pretty straightforward and pretty simple plot-wise. We have a beginning, we have the labyrinth that she is trying to go through, and then we have an ending point, which is the castle in the middle of the labyrinth. So overall, very, very simple. Of course, things do happen in the labyrinth, but the overall actual point of the story and what they're doing in the basic terms is very, very simple and straightforward. And in fact, 95% of the movie is her, or maybe I would even say maybe a little bit more, is her in the labyrinth just trying to get through and getting closer and closer to the castle. It has a very short introduction, and it has a very, very short resolution. So really, we're very quickly thrown into the labyrinth, and it's very, very quick to the ending once she comes out and after rescuing her brother and wrapping up. So again, not necessarily saying that this is a bad plot or a good plot, just depends for you as a viewer whether you prefer more complicated plot lines and more complicated things going on, or if you like just a simple, straightforward plot. Now let's look at the world building for this particular story. There is a lot of world building, I feel like, in this story, at least for the goblin world. So the goblin world, we have tons of world building. Everything she does in this world is building this world, I guess you could say. She runs into a lot of different types of goblins. So we're learning what kind of beings or goblins live in the goblin world, in this labyrinth. We learn about a lot of different kind of landscapes or areas that are in this labyrinth. We go through forests. We go through this stench pit. We go through different passageways that are underground. We've got the kind of the gardenish looking part of the labyrinth. We've got, different kind of landscapes, different kind of goblins, different kind of, lifestyles there. We've got villages. We've got just random doors. We've got the labyrinth changing on itself as she's walking through it. So the actual landscape and the actual people or beings that are there, we've got a lot going on as she continues through this one. We have like that one that's all the garbage landfill pit. So she explores many types of locations, many types of people that she's meeting. We've got doors that talk. We've got walls that talk. We've got the false alarm walls that are obviously thinking beings, and the fact that they argue and say, oh, can I say the false alarm? It's been so long. So we've got lots of different buildings or building blocks for this world, and it seems like pretty much almost anything can happen. We've got the area at the end where the gravity is all changing around. Like she's walking up the stairs and all of a sudden she's sideways and stuff like that. And the same thing with the Goblin King as he's walking around and the baby. We've got different cultures of goblins that we see. We've got different kinds of humor. Large variety of things in this world. So that is something that is really interesting and really great, is that we learn a lot about this labyrinth and this world and what's possible in it. That's actually one of the main lures of this particular movie, is the actual labyrinth world itself. At least that's what I got from it, was that the main focus of this story was really to explore this labyrinth and this world and to really be going through it and moving through it. So world building wise, that way we're chock full. Unfortunately, we didn't really get as much world building on the connection between this world and the regular world. We didn't really see or answer the question of how did these worlds connect? Is this just Sarah's imagination? Is this a real connection? She had that Labyrinth book. Is the book meaning, like, is there a power in that book, and that world is from that book? Is it just a normal everyday thing, that goblins, if you wish for them to take the children, they'll take the children? Like, people don't think it's real, but it's like actually a real thing that happens. Sarah isn't really that surprised when the Goblin King showed up. So, I don't know. I just feel like it's interesting that we've got this really intense building of this world, but then we don't really get exactly where this world comes from and what it means in the scope of connection to the real world that she's in. So I would have liked a little bit more development there just to exactly know, but maybe that's also the ambiguity of it maybe is part of the meaning, and I just would like it to be clearer. But I do feel like that is where our world building is a little bit less clear and a little bit less full, because we are not really sure how everything is connected. We know it's connected somehow, we just don't know exactly what it is. We don't really know the whether how real or imaginary the goblin world is. So next, let's go ahead and talk about some characters. So the first character to talk about is going to be our main character of Sarah. And I'm a bit unsure about my feelings about Sarah, because Sarah does have growth. I do really like that Sarah has growth. If you've watched me for a long time or read a lot of my reviews and things, you know that characters' growth, depth, being able to connect to the characters, it's all very big, at least for me personally. But I'm not really sure exactly what causes the growth. And for me, that's where I'm like, I'm not totally sure about her characterization. She starts off very annoying and very bratty and immature and mad and selfish. That all comes across very, very well. She's obviously annoyed with having to take care of her brother. She's annoyed that he would be playing with his toys, or that her toys would have ended up in his room. She's annoyed that she has to, be the responsible adult and do that. She's annoyed, and she really just wants her things. She wants her own time to do her own stuff, to, just very much self-oriented. Now, I do give her props in the fact that she does immediately say, hey, no, I need my brother back. I can't let you keep him. Please bring my brother back. So she has the moment of weakness where she wishes him away. I'm not really totally sure if she knows that wishing him away is actually going to take him away. But she does have the immediate turnaround and saying, hey, actually, I need my brother back. So I give her props for that. I really do. And this is why I'm kind of wondering, obviously she has that potential of changing, in the fact that she is not letting her brother just go into the abyss and being like, yeah, I can not have him and I can go and be in my own world and whatever, he's gone. But we still see her selfishness and her kind of brattiness at the very beginning, when she's entering the labyrinth, when she's getting fed up with the no ways to get into the labyrinth. So we see that there. But then after she talks to the snail, and ends up going through the labyrinth, that's when I feel like she's not really that bad. She does kind of whine with the Goblin King a little bit about unfairness and stuff like that, and she kind of learns the lesson from the Goblin King, oh, what's really fair, who decides what fair is and such. But her growth is kind of confusing, because I don't really feel like, I feel like it's kind of over. She's in the labyrinth, and then it's cool. She's not so self-centered anymore. She's really thinking about how to get through this labyrinth. She's thinking about the other goblins. She's making friends with Hogel. So I feel like she's very quick turnaround. And, we have that moment where, the actual physical moment where we know that she's changed, and the fact that she eats the peach and she doesn't just, when she wakes up in the trash pit and is able to go in her room, she doesn't just decide, oh yeah, I want to be just happy with my things. She does reject the things and leave the room. So she does have some distinct moments where we see that change. I just am not sure what really sparked that change. And the fact that it seems like it came fairly quickly, that she was getting better as a person very right away. And maybe it is more of a subtle growth of a change. But it just felt like, I don't know, maybe you can tell what I'm thinking by all the discussions that I'm having right now with it. But I just feel like the change didn't totally, there wasn't really anything that sparked that change. She just suddenly changed. And that she changed rather quickly. So I'd just love to know your thoughts about Sarah in that regard, and her growth and her change, because, and how you looked at it, because I just felt like she started off so bad, and then very quickly became okay. Like I didn't just hate her the whole time. I feel like her strong selfishness and stuff like that went away very quickly. So she was very, very, very strong at first, and then it really petered out right away. And then we see, obviously, that she's rejecting the stuff that before mattered to her. So we do have those concrete moments. I would have liked to have also seen the change that she had with her parents. I would have liked to have that little extra time instead of her just partying in her room with all the goblins and things. I would have liked to see her actually interact with her parents, and to see how she interacts with them now, see like maybe her parents noticing that change in her and being like, oh, that's so nice, like I actually can see that you're growing up a little bit. I would have really liked to see that little bit more of a dynamic at the end, to kind of further that concreteness of her growth and exactly where she's at now. So, of course, not a huge thing, but it just would have been nice to have really seen a little bit more of her interactions with her family, especially after the interactions we saw with her family originally were so poor. Okay, next let's talk about the Goblin King. So, the Goblin King, I feel like, is very classic in that he is a representation or a symbol of a particular archetype. I feel like he is not necessarily meant to be a specific character with his own traits. He's meant to be more of a symbol of that archetype. Archetype of being a tempter, a trickster, or just the seduction of materialism and your own desires. So I feel like that's really like what he is symbolizing and what he is meant to be in this story, is to be that representation of her desire, the representation of her inner tricksterness, like, you know, her way of proving to herself that it's okay to be that selfishness and to have her own desires being her focus, to tempt her back to her own desires. So I don't really say, not that he's like, you know, doesn't have any characteristics at all. Obviously, he really wants that baby so he can have another goblin in his midst. But I really see him more as this like general archetype, this general temptation for Sarah, than to be a character standing all on his own as his own motivations and his own desires. Instead, he's meant to be more of a reflection of the inner Sarah, which I like. I really do like that about him. I do think they did a good job with having him be this very mysterious, very seductive guy who is trying to keep her away from her goal and trying to seduce her back into staying the same instead of moving forward with her life and with retrieving her brother. So, yeah, not as much to talk about on his part. I just feel like he did a great job of David Bowie being the Goblin King. I do think that he really does play that temptress role very, very well, and that he has some very good moments where he is testing her, and I do like that about her, and I like the mysteriousness of him instead of the more concreteness of him. Next, let's talk about Hoggle, because he is another one of our main characters, in a sense, our very prominent goblin who is the first one to start helping Sarah through the labyrinth. And he does seem to me to be an outlier goblin. Like, he doesn't have friends, he doesn't have other goblins that he's hanging out with. We first see him just on the outside of the labyrinth, he's not even in it, killing these pixies like they're pests. And he's kind of grumpy and rude, and I mean, Sarah was grumpy and rude back, so I mean, I can understand. But in the same sense, it's kind of his personality is to be kind of grumpy and to be a little bit of standoffish, you know. So he definitely is a little rough around the edges, especially at the beginning of the story. Though we do definitely see a change in him. He is very cowardly, very materialistic as well. In many ways, he is a lot like Sarah, especially at the beginning of this story. He has he has a lot of similarities, and then I think she ends up recognizing that and ends up being able to use that against him by, you know, stealing his bag of things, and is like, oh, if you want these back, you're gonna have to help me, and doing that a little bit of blackmail kind of against him. But he ends up growing as well. He is a coward, and for that is kind of comes across throughout most of the story. But he ends up really learning to care about others. He ends up learning to care a lot about Sarah. In fact, though he keeps trying to leave Sarah and to run away, he ends up, despite being scared, continuously runs back to help her and comes back to stand beside her, and at the end is steadfast in standing beside her and against the Goblin King. So he ends up learning to love her. He ends up becoming friends with the other goblins that she makes friends with just by being around them as well in that proximity. He ends up not caring about his stuff or caring if he gets it back or not. So we do see a similar growth with Hoggle, and I do actually really like Hoggle as a character. I think that he shows there is a little bit of a cowardness in all of us, and I do think that he represents, you know, the being scared but then also being brave enough to try and push through that scaredness to do what's right for the people that we care about. So really liked Hoggle, really liked his growth, and really liked his role in this story. The other two goblins that are in this story are Ludo and Didymus. So I love Ludo. Like, Ludo was my favorite of the whole story. He is so cute and sweet and just lovable, and how could those other goblins hurt him? I mean, come on. He's so nice and sweet, and he's so just very cute, okay, guys? He's very cute. I know he's a giant goblin, but he was very cute, in my opinion. And I feel like that's what he was meant to be. He was just a very cute, fun, loving goblin. What more can I say? Didymus, I really did like as well. I liked him for a completely different reason. I liked him for his comedic relief, honestly. He was definitely meant to be comedic relief in this story. I really like that he is a brave knight. Like, he's the opposite. He's not a coward at all. He wants to go and fight, and it's very much that typical knight that's going to just charge into battle. And I love that his steed is not only a dog named Ambrosius, but the dog is a coward. Literally, the dog is like hiding, and he has to try and coax the dog out, and a lot of times he ends up getting caught by being on the dog, and the dog's like, I'm out. And so Ambrosius is just running away, and he's like, where are you going? So I definitely think that Didymus and Ambrosius were a really great comedic relief, and I think that was kind of their main point. I think they were meant to be helpful for Sarah to be some more friends along the way and to provide that comedic relief, but not meant to be super deep characters, and that's perfectly okay. Not every character has to have, like, a whole giant backstory and, length and lengths of depth to them. So they were really good, solid characters that did provide us with that comedic relief that I definitely enjoyed. So those are the main characters that I felt like needed to be mentioned and talked about. Please let me know if you have a favorite character, what you think about what I mentioned for each of these characters. Anything at all you'd want to say. If I missed anything, let me know. I would really enjoy hearing your thoughts and your feelings about this movie and the characters in it. Whew. Okay, so those are the main topics I wanted to discuss for the movie. Last but not least, I just want to kind of go over my personal thoughts for watching it, just since it's my first time watching it, and I'd like to talk about it with you guys and hear what you think. It definitely felt a little bit like an Alice in Wonderland story. She has all these like weird things that are going on to her, and kind of similar things kind of happen to like Alice in Wonderland, like the pit with like the helping hands. It seemed really Alice in Wonderland-y to me. The ones that are like the doors you have to go through and you have to ask like lying or not lying, as well as the ones with the knockers. The knockers seemed also like a Alice in Wonderland kind of thing. So it definitely felt kind of like an Alice in Wonderland type story. I will say for me personally, it's a very weird story. I got done with the movie and was just like, that's weird. It's weird. A lot of the stuff I felt like was very weird, especially the birds that are like throwing heads around and singing and stuff. It's a weird song and it's a weird scene. I don't know what you guys think, but I feel like it's odd. Maybe that's meant to be its appeal, is that it's weird, but it's weird. And I wonder, I just feel like it's not, I really enjoyed watching it, and I really feel like now it's good that I've seen it, as it's so iconic and I can then discuss it and I can connect to people about it. And I did overall enjoy the experience of watching it. I definitely feel like it was good to watch. But I also don't totally feel like it's my kind of story. I just feel like it's more weird than I would like normally in my stories. So overall, enjoyed the aspect of just watching it in general, of being able to understand, the hype around Labyrinth and to be able to have a conversation with you guys about it. But personally, on a personal note, I don't feel like it's totally my kind of movie. And I feel like that's fair. At least I hope it's fair. I do, again, really like the aspect of like kind of Alice in Wonderland kind of story. I do like some of the aspects of it, like individual moments and stuff like that. I just feel like in general, though, the weird stuff kind of was a bit too weird for me. And that's fair. And I'd love to know if you guys think that this movie is weird, or if it's great and why you think it's great, or any other thoughts that you have on it, or if you think that it's just overhyped or whatever you've got to say. I would just love to hear it. Thanks so much for sticking with me for this discussion. If you would like to discuss this movie with me, and down below is not the best place for you, that's perfectly fine. You are also welcome to contact me on social media. There is Facebook, which is /fantasyfiction1. You're also welcome to contact me through Twitter, which is @fantasyfiction1. I do updates on there with new content from both here and the blog. I do just fun things over there and other stuff that I'm posting, so hopefully you'll get all your updates there as well. Instagram, I am slowly working more and more on Instagram, so hopefully you'll follow me over there as well, which is also Fantasy Fiction 1. And if you want more content from me, go over to the blog, fantasyfictionfanatics.net. You'll see a lot of book reviews, book recommendations, book discussions, and fantasy discussions over there, terminology, lots of different stuff over there. So if you want more from me, go ahead and check it out. Hopefully you'll enjoy what I have over there as well. Of course, the best place to go, in my opinion, is to go to the Fantasy Fiction Fanatics Discord, because that is where you can not only talk to me, you can not only get updates and other announcements, but you can also talk to your fellow fantasy fanatics, and you can have discussions. We have lots of different tabs over there of different topics and things that are fantasy related and non-fantasy related, whatever you'd like to discuss. We just love to have you and have a conversation over there. So hopefully we will see you over there. I guess that's it for me today, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.